It's a nice overcast day, which means I can have some natural light come in, which is always good. I have east-facing windows. It's very, very bright in the morning, but days like this, I get to light up the space, and the cloud and a little bit of rain here made me think of ways to bring that into the drawing and have some fun with the weather, since we can't do much about it. I don't know, just thinking of a light way to bring some cloudiness, some softness to the paper, and maybe just starting by describing a bit of that layer. So in the warm-up, I'm just going to begin with drawing some horizontal lines, just moving the pen from right to left for a little bit, from left to right for a little bit, testing out the feel in the hand and getting comfortable in a position that places horizontal relative to how you're sitting, how you're holding the pen or pencil, just finding that space that we can hold on to for 20 minutes or so. These little warm-ups, just making sure everything's clicking, working together, and established here. So things like our paper or our pencil or our pen, or the kind of position of our chair, the extension or flex of our spine or arms can all settle into a place where they fall backwards from our attention by giving them just this little space of attention. And then that can let us focus into the space here of the drawing, our breath, our more subtle connections to the environment around us and to what we're creating, when those other contextual factors kind of drift or drop away. I'm going to move now from the warm-up page, just having produced a kind of field of a lot of horizontal lines, and begin again that same technique here, but as an entrance to each one having its moment and presence. We can breathe in at the start of the line and let it out as we draw from one direction to another, one point on a trajectory for a little while. That may go all the way across the page, or just a short journey. And repositioning as you breathe in can be sequential or random, and breathing out as you continue another journey with that moment of the pen or pencil's connection onto the paper, letting the attention to the breath and the drawing in of air, the relaxing out pressure in the diaphragm and the lungs, enter into the way that line may form. Does it start with that filling tension of expanding the lungs and feather its way out through the softness of the breath? Is it a consistent, even in and out, the beginning and end of the line, meeting smoothly and leaving in the same way? Or does it jump around a little bit, each one changing as we find that connection inward through the act of bringing our awareness to the breath, bringing attention to the speed and action of our hand, the letting out some of our movement here onto the paper, just beginning to create these continuous and expanding expressions of that rhythm in and out of the body. There may be a consistency, or perhaps as we're entering in, each one has its own strong character to that moment as the breath ebbs and flows, comes to a place of rest and consistency through our attention. Breathing in to find place and breathing out to mark. And the space can start to get crowded, and the lines may grow closer to each other, start to find our eyes searching, trying to see the next place for the line, and that can be an opportunity to close the eyes for a few strokes and just let the technique of the breath in and the line out happen without our intervention there visually, happen with less guidance, less intention to what we're making in terms of the image, and more attention to just what we're doing. If your eyes are closed, you might begin to notice some of the texture transfer through the pen or pencil. Bring some attention to the hand that's not engaged. How's it sitting? Is it touching something on the paper or clothing, or just floating out in the air? Able to pick up some of this subtle current, changes in temperatures, or just those light creaks and pops of our joints as they sit in stillness. And with a good field of lines, generally horizontal, starting to fill the page, I'm drawn to the cloudy day, and each of these shimmers on the edge of that gray surface having the potential to drop a little bit of precipitation, of rain, moving from horizontal and that curtain over our sky and the atmosphere to a vertical kind of sheeting or skirting down from those moments. Now letting the breath fall to the background and bringing the attention into the action of moving the arm or the hand, placing it and drawing towards yourself. Is it quick and smooth, slow, gradual? How do you bring these sheets through the sky, starting to fill some of the area with that soft evenness, with its subtle rolling and undulating, starting to play and have some feel for how you're expressing this transition from the act of the horizontal to the act of the vertical, the new orientation of the hand, pulling towards or drawing away, whichever suits your position. That movement through the chain, through the elbow, keeping the wrist engaged, having some mindful interaction to that arm chain that can allow us to pull through these spaces with both precision and lightness, a play here with our pen in our hand. It doesn't have to connect all the dots, but isn't lost in a mindless or unawareness. The intention narrowed down, focusing into the act or moment of each new vertical raining through that space of the horizontal. And the lines can cross or stop, giving us some presence within the new context or environment, aware of allowing them to extend through, or aware of bringing them up just before they cross to the next layer of the horizontal. Whichever one brings some of that guided practice to our precision, to the moment of engagement, but without overwhelming us with intention. And if they do cross or not quite reach as far as we intended, we just move on to the next one. In watching some of my students draw the other day, I've seen this for many years. It's hard to translate out things we see in our mind to this medium on the paper, and never quite matches up. And in that translation layer of intention, of wanting to present or represent an idea or image, it's easy to become tied to that image that we see, easy to let it override the thinking connection between our hand and the paper, our eye, in that space between us and a medium, and be concerned with precision or accuracy before the thought has a chance to fully emerge. And so, in the struggle of communicating, we reach for an eraser to change, to have that undo or edit function. And if we can practice a little resistance to that need to fix before it's finished, to let the hand draw, to move on to the next moment, and put the eraser away. Let the thinking hand and the thinking eye just work through the moment. Erasers are for the end, when everything's kind of there and you have to fix a few marks or little things that are out of place. Erasers are for refining the intention. Now we just establish something that could be, through this practice, a continual honing in on the way we hold the pencil, the way it makes a mark both with us and on its own, its material properties, guiding us as much as we draw through it, and finding some negotiation, some balance there that lets us have this medium, drawing, writing, or any other outward expression, always mediated through some interface. As we draw here, depending on the size of the paper, the number of lines you've drawn, you may fill the density of vertical or horizontal. Find you run out of new platforms for the next round of actions and practice. And we can always move back and start again, cycling through new horizontals to establish new verticals. Or if that brings some discomfort, depending on the feeling of overlap in these, and perhaps searching into the drawing for what might start to emerge there. Now that we've built up a world, a little space here between us and the paper and imagination, what can we find? As I let my eyes unfocus from the point of interaction, trying to blink them into broadness, maybe pull them closed tightly for a moment, squish them around and let them open again and just drift in that haziness or blurriness over what sits on the page and see something else. I see little platforms unfolding here, little plateaus layering, that horizontal cloudscape bathing this light, neutral atmosphere, becoming now a vertical cliffscape, maybe the side of some oyster mushrooms. Continuing to refine the relationship between that horizontal and that vertical as the visual engine of our brain takes in the space we've created and begins to give it shape or form from the abstraction of the field. Or if all you see are some horizontal and vertical lines, continuing to fill them, to let that field grow in density, to continue to practice the holding of the pen, the holding of the body, the rhythm of the breath. As the drawing doesn't have to be like anything. No necessary metaphor or representation. No abstraction of, just the real expression of the time here between the page, the pen or pencil, the drawer, the light and air in our space, the subtle sounds around us, coming through the window or from the next room. All of those enter here as some kind of influence, presence to what we might be creating. Is it subtle, or does it draw our attention outward? Is there a buzz or a hum that we forget to notice, but is always there, engaging our ears, other smells that bring us connection to the space, that establish our mood or atmosphere. Can we be aware and mindful of those so that we can guide them to help us make that space of play or productivity or relaxation? And when we don't have that control, maybe we're out or in an office, that we can only change so many of the environmental variables. Can we use some time with the breath to let them filter into the background, recognizing that they'll be there, and bringing our focus and attention to where we want to be and where we are. And then there's grown to be a good number of marks, lines, shapes, patterns onto the paper. I like to just let my eye wander over it and guide the pen, often repositioning, re-emphasizing or exploring lines made before, tracking them new, sometimes feeling the embodied kind of remembrance of making those marks, whether it's specific to any one, and now that action formed, or a re-experiencing of the energy at the time, remapping it, maybe even transforming it into something new as each moment we re-engage, reconnect to what's here on the page. Rarely is the same action repeated in the exact same way. Even the mundane, the repetition that becomes so necessary in many, many tasks, whether from us or shifted to the computer. Each time we perform it can be a new time, an opportunity to refine, to re-experience, perhaps to discover the subtle or the new. Or just to enjoy that one thing out of the many. The layering of action, each time new, each day new. The weather that starts the journey can shape so much of our day, that knowing what to wear, what to bring, where we'll need to be, concern with comfort or things taking place, grasping at a small amount of control, of simulating and foreknowledge to what the day might bring. And being grateful for that arbitrary, that element of complexity and dynamic systems outside of our control that produces a little variety. we can take the last 5 minutes or so in some quiet, maybe re-finding the breath as you retrace some of the steps. Give them presence, draw them out or draw them in together, and just have some time to explore here on the page. Be in that time of quiet and contemplation, of really riding in on some of the waves of the imagination and seeing new and seeing with our eyes whatever emerges. It also brought some space of contemplation or thinking, and I began to notice and wonder like how much of what we produce in a medium like drawing comes perhaps from our handedness, me being primarily right-handed for drawing and writing type of things. How much influence does that start to have over what we make or create and the way we think? And every once in a while to remember to try the other side a little bit, see how it goes. Well, I thank everyone for joining. It's good to see people, and hope you can stay dry out there. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.